Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, March 7th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feast and Marian meditations. Well, today we have a number of feasts that are going to take us to Italy, Guatemala, and even to Portugal. So we start off with Our Lady of the Star, Portugal. This is quite a fascinating story. So it was 1050. And two Benedictine monks who lived in the convent of Monte Cassino here in Italy decided to go on pilgrimage, teaching and catechizing all those they met along the way. Apparently, this was quite the pilgrimage because one night they found themselves on the coast of Normandy, France, right? So tired and sleepy, they decided to just sleep on the beach under the stars. So a Father Rogerio slept on the cool sand, and the other monk just decided to rest in a small boat that they found nearby. Right? Well, what happened? Well, the time came up, and the little boat was drawn out into the sea, and without realizing it, the monk would end up off the coast of England, right? So in Salisbury, England, everybody was surprised to see this monk in a little boat, convinced that it was a miracle that he had crossed the French sea in a small boat and lived to see England. Soon the monk was made bishop, and his time in office was very good for the people there. He was a humble man of prayer who sacrificed everything for God. Of course, that still leaves his friend, Father Rogerio, who knew nothing of what happened to his buddy. So all he knows is that his monk friend and the boat had disappeared. And he said, okay, well, I'm just going to continue my journey alone. Right? Well, one night, not long after, Father Rogerio went to sleep. And he had this dream that he saw a great star fall from the sky, burning all the bushes and the trees. And then a voice said, Our Lady wants a church built in this place. When he woke up, Father Rogerio looked about, like he was fine. It was indeed the place he had seen in his dreams, and everything around him was burned. So Father understood that Our Lady really did want a church there. And so he felt in his heart, too, that she needed the title Our Lady of the Star, because it was the star that had fallen and burned everything in his dream. So, unfortunately, the region was very poor, so Father Rogerio could only make a small altar and just a tiny chapel, right? However, this would eventually go into the great abbey of Our Lady of the Star of Monteburgo, right? That would give not only a huge chapel, but also a large convent. So what's the story? Well, King William, who was the Duke of Normandy, the one who conquered England, learned of the shrine of Our Lady of the Star. And so he sent his doctor, his private physician, to go and visit the little chapel to figure out what the story was. Well, when he got there, he found out that, this monk was the brother of Rogerio, right? So he listened to the account of how they had been separated from their friends, and then it was very, very surprising. And so Father Rogerio was informed about the monk who'd crossed the sea and said, oh, wow, that's your friend, right? So what happened? Well, the Bishop of Salisbury, who was the friend of Rogerio, asked King William to help build this monastery, right? So William the Conqueror gave Father Rogerio the entire region there, along with the resources to build a great church and an abbey that would become a very important seminary, right? We're told that historically the Abbey of Our Lady of the Star was for many centuries a point of reference for the entire church in that region, right? Unfortunately, as happens, right, the dark centuries came and the church and abbey suffered a great decline until 1842, right? It was basically ruined by that time. It was given to the Brothers of Mercy, and the abbey church was rebuilt, and then after a while, even the Brothers of Mercy left, right? Now, all that's left is a part that's used as an agricultural school. It's very sad because at one point it was a very important church and abbey, and now it's almost completely forgotten. But we're going to jump across the ocean now, proverbially, and see Nuestra Señora del Rosario in Quetzaltenango, Guatemala. So the tradition holds that the Spanish citizens who were in Guatemala at the time were carrying an image of Our Lady of the Rosary in procession to Guatemala. But they took a stop in the city of Quetzaltenango while crossing the high plains. Well, when the time came to leave and continue the procession, the image became too heavy for the oxen to pull. So, as usually happens, the local people, the Spaniards, they tried to get it to move, but they couldn't. When they turned the cart around, the weight lessened. And so everybody realized that Our Lady wanted to stay in Quetzaltenango. So the image was consecrated there on January 20th, 1781. And devotion intensified after April 18th, 1902, when there was a very big earthquake, right? So the earthquake produced a fire which consumed most of the church, but when the flames finally reached Our Lady's altar, the residents were able to rescue it and take it away, right? The townspeople immediately knelt and began to pray to Our Lady, and the earthquake subsided, right? The city thanked Our Lady of the Rosary for its survival, right? Sela, as Quetzaltenango is sometimes called, now the second most important city in Guatemala, celebrates its patroness in late September and early October, right? However, why do we talk about it today? Well, on March 7th, 1983, Pope St. John Paul II crowned the statue during his pastoral visit to the native communities in the place, in the state, in the plains of Olitenepeque. So John Paul II crowned the image himself in 1983 on this day. And lastly, we come to Madonna del Monte Berico in Vicenza, Veneto, in Italy, right? So Our Lady of Berico Mountain, right? And this recalls an apparition in 1426. It was the morning of March 7th, 1426, when just a peasant woman in her 70s, Vincenza Passini, married to Francesco de Montemezzo, left the little town of Monteberico in order to bring her husband breakfast. When she reached the summit of the mountain, where there was a cross made of olive wood, the lady, genuflected, as she usually did, knelt down in order to pray. With a bright light, the Queen of Heaven appeared to her and said, "I am Mary, the Virgin, Mother of our Lord Jesus Christ. Do not be afraid, Vincenza, because you will be my ambassador towards the people of Vicenza. Tell them that I want here constructed a church in honor of my name, without which, under no way, will the city be able to be liberated from the punishment of the plague that is exterminating it." Right? So, that's the condition. You have to build a church here in order to be spared from the plague. Well, so she took the olive wood cross, and with it, she traced the land which would be the perimeter of the church, right? And she even left told them precisely where the high altar should be. Only after a second apparition on August 2nd, 1428, did they begin to work on the church. And then, and it says in improviso, in an improviso way, like an unexpected way, but really when you think about it, it's quite expected. You listen to Our Lady, good things happen. The plague stopped, and the religious and economic life began to flower again in a miraculous way. So, again, that's what we're celebrating throughout the Marian world today, March 7th. For today's reading from the Imitation of Mary by Alexander de Rouville, we continue with Book 3, which concerns the virtues of Mary in her life after Jesus' death until the Ascension. And today we consider Chapter 8, The Suffering of Relatives and Friends. At times, God afflicts us in the person of relatives and friends, and our affection for them makes us feel their sufferings deeply. What anguish for a mother to see her son on the bed of pain, or for a friend to see fearful trials weighing on a friend and be unable to help him. The anguish is frightful, and not to be reproached as long as it is subordinate to God's will. It becomes reprehensible when it ceases to be resigned, and breaks out into complaints against divine providence. Imagine the suffering of Mary during the passion of her Son, who had shown her such tender and incomparable love. How often she must have said in her heart, my son, if only I had died instead of you, my son, my son." It's from 2 Samuel 19:1. If the daughters of Zion wept as they saw Jesus passing by, weighed down by the cross, who can imagine the anguish of Mary as she saw him on the altar of pain, agonizing and breathing his last? If only she could have brought him some relief, or held his throne-crowned head, or moistened his thirst-dried lips, or suffered for him. But no, she had to stand there and simply look on all his torments, and hear around her the sacrilegious voices that insulted the very power and divinity of Jesus. There is a sweetness in suffering for someone we love. How hard it is to see someone we love suffer and be unable to console them. What then was Mary to do in such a terrible difficulty? Was she to endure to the end the horrible sight, or go away and spare herself the pain of seeing her son die amid torments? Unlike the mother of Ishmael, who chose to abandon her child so as not to have to see him die, Mary stayed by the cross, submitting peacefully to the decrees of the Eternal Father, and offering the sufferings of Jesus to him for the salvation of the world. She stayed because God wanted her to, and she stayed until the sacrifice was complete. Her faith, submission, and love of God made her a second victim, which heaven accepted with gratitude, along with the holocaust offered by the Redeemer of mankind. Whoever you are, loving father or faithful friend, child or spouse, anyone about to lose the person who is your consolation in this world, learn to master your sorrow. Remember that if you are losing a great deal on earth, you are in a position to gain much in heaven. Our religion does not condemn your tears or your sensibility, but if you listen to it, it will teach you to govern and sanctify your tears and your feelings. It forbids you to abandon yourself to the deadly sorrow that refuses to be comforted, but it offers you the fulfillment of God's will as the motive best suited to console you. Seek consolation for your weeping heart, but turn to God as well. Adore his intentions and submit humbly to them. Try to alleviate the sufferings of people dear to you, for God would have you do so. He also allows you to ask for their healing, but ask with submission, leaving everything to him. You can say to him, "O Lord, my desire is before you. From you my groaning is not hid. My heart throbs. My strength forsakes me. The very light of my eyes has failed me. Lord my God, in you I trust. In you I hope. Hear my prayer for this person's health. I am ready to do your will, for I want whatever you want, my God."
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our Marian podcast. As St. John Paul II teaches us, from Mary we learn to love Christ, her Son, the Son of God. Through her intercession, may we grow ever closer to him. We encourage you to share this with a loved one or friend and help spread our devotion to Mary. Thank you, and God bless.